Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
The word synchronized etching, keep that in your scope here.
Welcome to this episode of the Woodworking Network podcast. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by the Executive Briefing Conference. We'll be talking with Jesse Collins, Marketing Manager for the Furniture Solutions Division of Rehow. But first, I want to talk about the intersection of technology and fashion. Two of the biggest drivers of change in the world are technology and fashion. And despite what you might think, they are not unrelated. From our perspective as an industry that largely manufactures practical goods, there likely is a tendency to downplay the importance of fashion in moving the industry forward. After all, products such as cabinets and furniture are meant to be used in practical ways to store goods, support our bodies in work and leisure, and to pragmatically solve some of the problems that life throws at us, like how to cook dinner. Isn't fashion just fads and frivolousness? Not really. The reality is that seemingly down-to-earth products such as chairs and tables have for centuries been as much about fashion as technology. While there has always been a baseline of minimum functional requirements for furniture, even going back to the first rock or log someone sat on as an ad hoc chair, there just as quickly followed trends to dress up that practicality with shaping and coloring. Let's face it, as much as we give lip service to architect Louis Sullivan's edict that form follows function, we really like that form to be pleasing to the eye. And what pleases the eye changes over time. That's fashion. On the technology side, we are constantly inventing new materials, machines, and methods of work that expand the limits of what we can do. Today, additive manufacturing, often called 3D printing, has the potential to revolutionize many industries like woodworking that have for centuries been dependent on subtractive processes. Synthetic new materials change both the structure and look of furniture and cabinets. Some of the latest synthetics do an amazing job of mimicking the look and feel of wood. And more furniture and cabinet designs incorporate mixes of wood, metal, and synthetics. Fashion has long embraced a constant chase after the next new thing. That's true in clothing, furniture, and cabinets, because technology drives what is possible and fashion drives demand. It is often hard to tell which are doing the most to drive trends. Are soft closed drawers just a technological advance or a fashion trend? Do new finishing materials and techniques drive demand for different kinds of surfaces and sheens, or is it the other way around? Current concerns about the environment and global climate change are spurring both changes in customer demand and technological changes in how we make things to last and have less of a negative effect on the planet. Personally, I confess I'm more fascinated by the impact of technology. When I see all the annual press releases about designers choosing the color of the year, I mostly chuckle. But I can't deny that color trends affect our industry. Did somebody say gray? No, neither fashion nor technology can be ignored. That's why manufacturers need to keep abreast of both technology and fashion. That's why designers and architects need to pay more attention to technology as they create what will become the latest design fashion. We must recognize that the reality of Sullivan's advice in today's world is that form follows both function and fashion. Before we get to our chat with Jesse Collins, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. It's really easy for woodworkers to stay stuck inside, focused on their shops and production. But over the last couple of years, the pandemic has forced them to be even more isolated than usual. And it's even harder if what you want is to network with the top level executives in the industry. Where and how can you do that? The answer is the Executive Briefing Conference coming this September at the spectacular Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. This is an unparalleled opportunity to boost your business with intelligence on techniques, tools, and technology, and to feed on inspiration from real leaders in the industry, not to mention take in all the high-altitude hospitality and beauty and recreation offered by the Broadmoor. Learn more at executivebriefingconference.com. See you there. Now let's talk about surfacing trends with Jesse Collins. Today, our guest is Jesse Collins, Marketing Manager for the Furniture Solutions Division of Rehau. During more than 11 years with the company, she's worked to establish Rehau as a market-leading, trend-setting, edging surfaces and cabinet door solutions brand. Welcome to the Woodworking Network podcast, Jesse.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, well, I think that with surfacing, it seems to be such a trend-driven field that everybody wants to know what's new. And from your perspective, what are you seeing as the biggest trends in surfacing and edging materials right now as it relates to cabinets and furniture?
Absolutely. It's been kind of an interesting couple of years when it comes to trends in general, but especially in the surfacing and design materials world. We've seen I'll even start to say we've seen a pivot towards people wanting to choose higher quality materials, maybe because they've had some time to do some research, and possibly pivoting to materials they don't have to worry about quite as much, or maybe their installers or the people running their edge banders won't have to fiddle with, and hopefully reduce some of those labor costs, because we all know that is a huge element in today's world. But when it comes to actual trends, which was your actual question, we've come right off of the Eurocucina Salon de Mobile that was in Milan last week. And I don't have a full report quite yet. We're still getting some stuff from our colleagues because I unfortunately wasn't able to attend. But we're really seeing an increase in those neutrals becoming warmer. So you're going to see a bit warmer, more or saturated neutrals on the warmth side. But then also some really interesting plays on color where we may have not been so bold in the past. They're really trying to move forward on adding and making that step to a color where you maybe weren't going to in the past. And overall, we're just seeing there seems to be a sense of wanting to surround yourself with meaning, creating and choosing surfaces with creative connections to experiences, something that's dynamic and customizable, something that connects you to some sort of memory you've had in the past. So maybe bringing that exceptional piece of art that you had from your travels in a country in Africa, and like designing a space around that. So that ultimately fundamentally comes back to the surfaces and drives where you may pivot a little bit more bold than you were in the previous years.
Interesting. So it sounds like too the ongoing trend that we've been seeing in kitchens in particular, where they're contrasting different kinds of surfaces in the same kitchen and different colors and contrast that way. That sounds like that's continuing on.
Absolutely. And this really making that place your own. I mean, we know that the American market is designing, unfortunately or fortunately, who knows, but for resale value, which is a very much real element that we want to think of. But I think the past few years have kind of changed our mindset where we may be in a space more often than we were in the past, and to really make that space reflect you or your client's design, like intentionally designing for them, maybe not as much as for resale value as it was before the past few years.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because I know that there's a misconception in the American market. They don't realize that, particularly with the European style frameless construction, that in Europe, in many of the places there. People take their kitchens with them when they move, that they're
Absolutely.
kitchen furniture. It's not something that stays in the house when they sell it. And
Exactly. I mean, the world that they call it furniture.
yes,
We don't necessarily think of our kitchens or our built-in structures in our house as furniture because they're built in. And we have, there's always some fun little conversations I have with my European colleagues when they wanted us to use the word furniture. We're trying to be cohesive on some sort of campaign and they're using the word furniture. I'm like, in America, furniture is your sofa, your chairs, maybe shelving,
yeah, it's
maybe,
freestanding
but
stuff.
definitely
Yeah.
not your kitchen. It is built and it stays with that home.
That's funny. Now, one of the things that we've been seeing a lot of here in the States and seems to be a rising trend, is it continuing that the textured wood look laminates are still on the rise? Is that really still a popular thing?
Absolutely. We've seen significant growth of increase in our Ralvisio Terra line, which is our textured HPL. It's a super soft, like really realistic looking textured wood grain. Very much an increase in interest. And what has been interesting is the dynamic shift of which colors have been popular. So that's what's kind of like moved. There's still for sure an increase of popularity, but it went from, I think when we launched the line about 5 years ago, the gray undertones, maybe whitewashed, things that were a bit more subtle. Now the ones we can't keep on the shelf are those honey toned colors and the mid-level wood grains,
So
like slightly lighter,
warmer stuff.
warmer. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
interesting.
And that, I mean, it very much coincides with what I said earlier. Those warmer is coming. I mean, for so long we were gray washed. Most things were gray washed, and we're really seeing a growth in those in warm undertones.
Yeah,
And like
that's
medium, like
yeah, mhm.
not
Yeah,
super
not
light.
real dark and not real light.
Right.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's been a kind of a interesting disconnect that seems to be happening in surfacing and materials where, synthetic reproductions of natural materials are overtaking the actual use of the natural materials themselves.
Right.
And there's even some argument, we've covered it a lot, that the synthetic materials actually have a smaller carbon footprint in manufacturing. Can you speak to that at all?
So I can't speak to an actual direct number for smaller carbon footprint. I know there's some studies about that, but not quite my expertise at this point. But we know we all want to conserve our natural resources as much as possible and use them in the right way. So if we can make a high quality, high performing engineered material with less of a footprint, less of taking that natural resource, I think that it makes sense to use as little of those resources as possible. So when the design allows, when you need some flexibility, when you need maybe some color consistency that's not quite as possible, or you have a larger project and want to optimize labor costs, it might be the right move overall to move towards the engineered surface versus the natural.
Well, certainly you can get a much more consistent material,
right.
And particularly if you've got to do really large surface areas and things like that, and you want it to look right.
Exactly.
So that's definitely it. And it's just amazing to me the look and feel now that can be achieved with the sophisticated embossed surfaces where the embossing really does follow the grain that's on the paper below. And
right.
It just is, you have to look 2 or 3 times to make sure it's not the real thing.
Exactly. And what we're seeing is, and I'm going to give a little teaser to a new product that we're launching at IWF, but while it's in this wood grain world, a sense of playing with that flow, that grain flow in other ways besides embossing. So possibly playing with some gloss levels and things like that. So that's all I'm going to give right now as a sneak peek, but I think we're going to only see this world of what you can do with texture and wood grain on an engineered level only grow further. beyond even what it is now. And it is amazing now. It's so impressive with what we can do to make cabinetry look like real wood without being actual wood.
That is interesting. Now, what about surface finishes and sheens? We've had situations in the past where there's been really ultra high gloss, and then there's been, the other extreme of really dull matte finish, and everything in between. What's happening? Is it that contrast in the same installation to do different sheens, or is it going anywhere in particular?
So I still would say I think we're living in a priority super matte world currently. But what we're doing is playing with what you just described, comboing it with some texture, comboing it with some other extreme of high gloss, which is really fun. In our line, we're able to kind of play with all of those, which is so much fun to do from a marketing point of view, and also to serve some clients and play with projects. But I would say the matte is still king. Matte is still, as far as still the hot trend. What they're doing inside of the mattes, though, is playing with color. So instead of it just being your neutrals, we're having some unsaturated pastels, bringing in some options for like I was describing earlier, little hints of color, but the matte gives it a softness that doesn't make it quite as scary for a lot of people when they're doing their designer choices or trying to offer something to a client. The matte makes it a little more approachable, especially for the American market, than if you were to think about a red high gloss, which is a fun choice for a certain design, but not for everyone. Whereas a more muted, a minty matte may be something that someone can jump into besides your typical painted white, which we see obviously
more of a
most
chalk
of the time.
Finish or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. But playing with that color undertone to give it a little bit more pizzazz, to make it something that feels more like you instead of what's exactly in your neighbor's home or in the unit, multifamily unit that was built next door that you're trying to build and offer to new prospective owners or occupants, something that you can say, oh, hey, we're doing something a little different over here.
Well, I think too that it seems to be that the color is being used as sort of a point of whimsy and accent, and I think it goes too with the popularity of a lot of the mid-century modern kind of style furniture. And they put in that kind of little pop art kind of a thing there as an accent, and that works. But I could see how the sheen taking away the gloss could make that fit in better in a situation.
Absolutely. And for sure, still seeing not still, but even more use of those combinations of matte and high gloss and texture all in one space, and really playing with those different sheens and textures to make a space all your own.
That is interesting. And it sounds like designers have their work cut out for them to try and combine all of these palettes without, getting some kind of what we used to derisively say in the newspaper business, the Carmen Miranda layout look.
Yes, there's a sweet spot there. You don't want to go onto that side of the line.
Now, getting back to the textured laminates, the major advances in technology for photorealistic embossing just made those things possible. What's the next big technology breakthrough that's going to affect surfacing? Got any insight there?
Any insight? Well, I will hint again at something. I won't give too many things, but the word synchronized etching, keep that in your scope here.
Okay.
Versus an embossing, because we are seeing We are seeing the embossing coming out of Europe is getting a little softer, a little lighter, not quite as intense, not quite as deep, but still wanting to follow the grain. So a more realistic, you're getting even more realistic. So the paper, the print is getting more hyper realistic, and then also the finish as well. So we're gonna hopefully be playing in a world of synchronized etching. So that's playing with gloss levels in line with the grain instead of embossing in line with the grain. So
now what about sort of going into the issues of all these different sheens have also different maintenance challenges?
Sure.
And, I know that you folks had a product, I don't know if you're still doing it or not, or if it's expanding, that was designed to basically take away fingerprints and things like that. Is that an area that's we're going to see more things happening in?
Absolutely. So that you're referring to our Ralvisio Noir line, which is a monotonic matte. So a super high performing matte product that is insanely durable, fingerprint resistant, scratch resistant, and also repairable, thermally repairable. So yes, we're expanding that line too. You're giving all my tricks away.
Well,
no, it's good. We see like an increase of the matte. It's not going to go anywhere. And it's really, I think a more approachable sheen extreme for the American market anyway. So it just makes sense for us to include and expand that line even further.
Well, I think it's always been in these surfacing materials. There has been, huge variety, almost intimidating variety.
Right. Yeah.
When you see all the choices and I know from my own sales experience that sometimes too many choices is not a good thing.
Right.
So you really have to get your designers and specifiers educated so that they can help customers through this blizzard of opportunity and choices that they have. What kind of recommendations or suggestions do you have for folks to narrow their options or to select the best options for their customers?
Oh, that's a toughie. I think that is the art of interior designers. That's what they go to school for, to learn how to understand and research and figure out product options that they are then the filter for the client. And what we try to do is maybe do a bit of that pre-work for them. So as a manufacturer, of course, we're based in Europe as well and have the pulse over there of like upcoming trends, because we all know that comes out of Italy, especially most of the design trends, either in the home, Scandinavia. It mostly comes and starts from Europe, but not everything's going to resonate here. So we try to really pick and choose the lines and even curate the colors within those lines for things that we think are boundary pushing for the American market, but not something that is completely unapproachable. So trying to help with the designers or help out the designers to not have this vast program of things that we know are never going to be wanted here, but try to also act as put a little bit of an interior designer hat on when choosing materials, and also asking interior designers to be a part of that process with us. We do that quite a bit, and making sure that they are well equipped when we do offer a line, that they know all of the features and benefits, what could possibly be the application in which this product would be used best. Some things resonate a bit more residentially than they do commercially. And as we all know, that those are two different designers, two different schooling, two different approaches to pleasing a client. So making sure that they know where they can find the resources in order to do their jobs the best, because that's really what they're doing, is they're filtering out all of those thousands of options in order to figure out what's the best approach for the client.
Well, there seems to be a flip side of that discussion too, from the manufacturing direction. I think that a lot of people in the industry are focused all on the design side specifiers, and they're not paying attention to the manufacturers who they can have a significant role in choosing lines and materials that they like to work with. And
Absolutely.
I would encourage manufacturers to not just leave all of that argument in the hands of the designers and architects, that they should know about these products so that they can steer those designers and architects that they work with to choose the things that they like to work with. Does that make sense too?
Oh, complete agreement. And that's why we don't just chill and hang out with interior designers all the time, but why we're talking every single day to cabinet shops and architectural millwork shops, and making sure that they are up to speed and aware of the products, at least that we offer, or how they compare to others. And what I think is really interesting is an interior designer can come with a product line that they want to use based on it looking really amazing, or they think it's the right need for the client based visually. And then the shop will come and say, but this is actually really a pain to work with. Would you be willing to
or something?
Yeah,
like
it doesn't
that.
hold up. Or we've had some jobs we've installed that the project owner or the homeowner was not happy because of the end quality. Would you consider submitting or substituting your spec to this product because we work with it really well. You'll be able to say the end project will save on labor costs because it installs easier, or we're able to edge band it better or faster, or whatever so much knowledge comes from the shop and the manufacturer. That's why we make sure that we are in constant communication with both audiences to get them up to speed on whatever that they need to ensure that the end client gets the best product, and that people don't feel like it was the absolute pain in the world to work with in the process.
That's great. Well, that's really important to get the whole feel of it. And I'm really excited to see you in Atlanta and see what new products you guys are offering and all. It's this is a really exciting part of the industry right now. And
yes,
I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of knowledge to share. So I appreciate you spending time with us today. This has been great, and giving us a taste of some of the new stuff, and hope to dig in August at IWF.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Will, and can't wait to see you at IWF.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot. That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, the Executive Briefing Conference. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.